What's up, YouTube? It's Tate, wearing sunglasses indoors, partly because my identity, partly out of insecurity. So I wanted to do a review for Alex Garland's Civil War from the production studio A24. Great studio. They made a lot of good movies recently. They've been making a lot of good movies for the last few years, and I've liked a lot of their work. Alex Garland's work too. I wanted to talk about this movie specifically because, honestly, this has to do with a lot of Alex Garland's work since Ex Machina. I think that he has these great concepts and doesn't flesh them out all the way. Men, not that I was particularly excited about what it seemed like he was doing with that movie, but I think he's very good at atmosphere, at tension, at general directing when it comes to beautiful shots, and working very well with his cinematographer. And I think even sometimes he does a good job at visual storytelling and telling you things without any dialogue at all. He usually doesn't have too much dialogue in his movies. I think his work before Ex Machina, which was his debut feature film, he did a great job with his writing work on movies like Sunshine and 28 Weeks Later. And I've always been following him and interested in what he's going to do next, even after I saw Men and was disappointed with it, because Ex Machina is one of my favorite films. So when Civil War was announced, obviously I think everyone kind of collectively eye-rolled at the concept, even though it is kind of cool and exciting to think about it being done right. But everyone's always got an opinion or a bias when it comes to that subject matter. And I think a lot of people were thinking about that when it came to this film, thinking that the film was going to take a stand, a political stand, and give us a bunch of explanations as to why the country went to shit, why everyone's fighting, and whose fault it is. They don't do that with the film, which is, in my opinion, it's a relief, right? And I think a lot of people were talking about boycotting the movie and shitting on it during the marketing campaign because they thought that's what was going to happen. And that's not what happened. I do still think the film has its issues. It definitely does. And it's got issues, I think, in the same way Men does, to be honest. But I also think that what people were worried about, they shouldn't have been worried about that. You know what I mean? The movie looks beautiful. It has very interesting choices when it comes to editing, when it comes to... there's no denying how good the fucking sound design is. Some of the best sound design. I mean, it almost sounded like a Michael Mann movie with the gunshots, in how much they clearly wanted you to be in the situation when it came to the action sequences. In this Civil War in America scenario. And I think that was the point, because this is an anti-war movie. I think this is going to be talked about a lot and compared a lot to this movie. I was getting major Apocalypse Now vibes, pretty much the entire movie. And it's so funny. It kind of reminded me of Zombieland in some ways too, with some of the shots. Not really the vibe that the movie evokes and gives you, just really the shots and some of the locations. But Apocalypse Now, I think, is the closest comparison. This movie really has an Apocalypse Now vibe to it, and the closer they get to DC, the president is basically a substitute for Kurt in this movie, for Marlon Brando. Nick Offerman is Marlon Brando in this movie, and not really, but you know what I mean. And the closer they get to DC, the screen gets darker, the sky gets more orange, things get more violent, things get more intense. And the only problem with that, as cool as I thought it was when I noticed that was happening, is that, damn dude, now I'm just going to be comparing this movie to Apocalypse Now while I watch it. And that's exactly what happened. Something that's a little different. I think Apocalypse Now is brilliant in terms of the pacing and how things progressively get more intense once they get to Kurt's compound. But once they get there, the intensity ramps up extremely, but things also get quiet. What happens in Civil War is things progressively get louder. By the time they get to DC, the sky is orange, everything's red, buildings are blowing up because they're in an extreme, intense war situation. And the last 20-25 minutes of the film are more action-packed than, anything that happens the first hour and a half of the film. And not to say that there isn't things that happen and that there isn't some disturbing scenes, but I do think a lot of people will come out of this movie thinking either that almost nothing happened until Jesse Plemons' scene, or that things didn't start getting good or getting going until Jesse Plemons showed up. And the issue is that, first off, you notice that if you're a Jesse Plemons fan and you're looking forward to the scene, which is one of the main things that they're advertising during this campaign, right? So people might even claim that they were lying, with how short the scene is and how much he's not really in the movie. After that scene wraps up and all the characters have dealt with that disturbing part, all of a sudden they're in Washington, D.C., and you realize we're coming up on the end of the movie. And I think that might mess with some people when it comes to pacing and how they feel about it. I think a lot of the combat, like war tactic, a lot of that is some of the best you've seen on a film, and that's why you're reading these reviews about best combat ever seen on film. That's not true, but the last 20-25 minutes are very entertaining, and you will get something out of this movie in terms of the vibe it evokes, and it works kind of as a PSA and let's not let America get to this point so that, we're not all going through this. But I also don't think it works in other ways that it might have wanted to, because the movie kind of shoots itself in the foot while also not taking a political stand and explaining how we got to this point. It very much just lays out who's on whose side, and then the road trip starts. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You get an idea at the end, who is winning, and what's going to happen. But you don't really learn anything about the position America's in, why it's in this. It's just all about being in the war and how bad it is, and how regardless of what got us here, let's not let this be, where we end up. And it'll work in that way, but the fact that it doesn't really get into it and really bring up a discussion, the movie is really still just escape. And I think that's the people that enjoy it will that's probably the most they'll still take out of it. It's very fun in the way that it's a darkly aesthetic Alex Garland film, but Men was too. Annihilation was too. I think Ex Machina was a little more than that, but he hasn't topped that yet. And until he figures out to completely flesh out these cool concepts that he has initially, he's not going to dig himself out of the little hole that I feel like he thinks he's put himself in, considering he's now talking about how he's going to step down from directing. And I think he's working on the next 28 days /weeks /years sequel. So it's a cool film, and I actually do think it's worth seeing for a couple of reasons. But I also do think a lot of people are going to be bored too, and that the film didn't necessarily do a good job of proving people wrong when it comes to, we need a Civil War movie, and it's going to turn heads, and, this is a movie we need right now. I do think there was potential for that. Just like maybe there was potential for people to think about Men differently after watching Men. But no, unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. Just like we got to see a man give birth to a bunch of other men, and then little men, and then a black man. In this one, we get to see what it's like if everyone gets pissed off and some people decide to go kill the president, and how awful that is, just like it's awful to watch a man give birth. But yeah, that's my review. I'm still going to watch Garland's next film. I'm looking forward to what he does next, if he does end up directing another film. But that's how I feel about it. I'm not going to say wasted potential, but I will say that it's pretty much the most 6.75 out of 10 film you'll ever see. And yeah, keep working with amazing cinematographers. Beautiful looking film, but we just got to start fleshing these stories out more, because I think we need some more thinkers. But alright.